Guru Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Let's start the recitation. Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava prichami tvam dharma samuda chetaha yachreyasya nischitan bruhitan me sishyaste ham shadi mam tvam prapannam dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tata dehantara praptir dhirastatra namuyati Neha vikramanashosti pratyavayo na vidyate svalpam api asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat dhyayato vishayan pumsa sanghaste shupajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodho vijayate Krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vibramaha, smriti brimshat buddhinasho, buddhinashat pranashyati, yagyartat karmano nyatra, loko yam karma bandhanaha, tadartam karma kaunteya, mukta sangha samacharaha. Yadyadacharati shreshtas tattadhevetaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastadhanu vartate Shri Bhagavan uvacha Kama esha krodha esha rajo guna samudbhavaha mahashano mahapapma viddhiyenam iha vairinam saevayam mayatedhya yoga prokta puratanaha bhaktosi me shakacheti Rahasyam hietad uttamam vidya vinaya shampanne brahmane gavihastini shuni chaiva svapake cha pandita samadarshinaha bhoktaram yagyatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram shuhurdam sarvabhutanam nyatva mam shantim richati Yoginam api sarvesham madgatenantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yo mam same yukta tamo mataha. Translation. And of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagwan Ki. Hare Krishna. So today we are moving to the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Transcendental Knowledge. I know I'm rushing a bit, but please bear with me just for the first 6 chapters because there are so much concepts for us to cover. Once we have this strong foundation, it'll be a very smooth ride for rest of our course, not just for rest of Gita, but for all other books that we are going to study. Her name is Riddhi. How old is she?
She has turned 8 today.
8 today. All of you please chant one Hare Krishna Maha Mantra wishing Riddhi happy birthday today. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Happy birthday. So last week after the class, I was talking to her. I asked her how her reading is going. This is how our conversation went. What's your name? Riddhi. Do you study Prabhupada's books? Yes. How often? once a week, or maybe a few times. For how long? 30 minutes. Thank you. You're welcome. And she just walked away. How sweet. Okay, so thank you so much for all the wonderful support and your sincerity. Last week, I had quite a few interesting questions emailed to me, but there was one that I thought was very relevant, especially those who are starting to practice Krishna consciousness. Because last week we were discussing how in Krishna consciousness we should follow 4 regulative principles and chant 16 rounds. And there was one question that was asked, which of the 4 regulative principles are we allowed to compromise? Which I said, I strongly declined, no. So there was one question that was asked by a sincere devotee attending in Mayapur TV online. And the question was, I like chanting, I like kirtan, but I'm still a non-vegetarian. I'm very attached to eating meat. So what should I do? Should I practice or shouldn't I? Where do I stand in Krishna consciousness? So I thought it would be relevant if I share my experience. So when I started practicing Krishna consciousness, I started in Adelaide. That is in 2005. My routine for 6 months would go something like, evening 6 o'clock, I'll go visit the temple, attend the Gaurarati, talk to some devotees, visit the temple shop. There weren't those many devotees those days. Those days is like, well, maybe 13, 14 years ago. And then from there, I'll go all the way to one Punjabi restaurant to eat my favorite food, which is a non-vegetarian cuisine. From there, I'll come home. This is how my routine started for 6 months. Until one day, I was given service in the temple restaurant there. Then I started to do service. Then you start to develop some taste. Okay, there is one of the biggest worries for many when they make the switch to vegetarian cuisine is their lack of experience. Nobody knows how to cook food tasty, especially without onion and garlic. We'll soon start cooking classes for that. Just to answer this question, so wherever we are, we should start practicing Krishna consciousness. In fact, Prabhupada said, this quote is very relevant. Prabhupada said, what's so glorious about being a vegetarian? And Prabhupada says, pigeons are vegetarian, yet they have sexual intercourse 200 times a day. On the other hand, Prabhupada says, lion is a non-vegetarian, but it has sexual intercourse only once a whole year. So Prabhupada says, being a vegetarian doesn't make pigeon any good, and being a non-vegetarian doesn't make lion any bad. So Prabhupada said, we don't want to be vegetarian or non-vegetarian, we want to be prasaditarian. Prabhupada says that. So our journey has to start somewhere. So wherever we are, we may be able to follow 4 regulative principles, may not be. We may be able to come to temple regularly, may not be. We may be able to chant regularly, may not be. Doesn't matter. Everyone is welcome to come and practice Krishna consciousness. Everyone can choose their level, and then everyone can take baby steps at their own pace. One thing I want to also put it in there on the table was that nobody is actually judged based on where they stand in Krishna consciousness at all. Because everyone has their own good qualities and bad qualities. Everyone is under the shower. Everyone's body is dirty. What's the point in criticizing one saying, hey, you are more dirty than mine? Or like, your body is more dirty than mine. So I just want to make it clear that this is the standard we are aiming for. 4 regulative principles and chanting 16 rounds, taking initiation. For some, they may be able to take it up quick, and for some, the journey may just be starting now. Like, sometimes you will see kids, they just come, pick up mridanga, and they start playing. Some kids you might see picking up harmonium and start to sing. Someone like me, it took me 10 years to first learn the first beat. I tried, I gave up. And I tried, gave up. Tried, gave up. And then at some point, you pick it up. You keep on hearing. Because then we can understand that this process of Krishna consciousness or Bhakti Yoga is not a one-life exercise. It's a multiple lifetime exercise. But the beauty is, as Prabhupada says, if we progress, let's say, only 10% in this life, from next life, if we continue, it will start from 11% onwards. Okay, so hope that clarifies that question. Okay, so today, we are going to go to 4th chapter, Transcendental Knowledge, one of my favorite. Transcendental Knowledge. And the link between third chapter and the fourth chapter is towards the end of third chapter, Krishna mentions about lust, and he says how this transcendental knowledge is important to conquer that lust. Krishna uses the word spiritual intelligence. By deliberate spiritual intelligence, one will be able to conquer the lust. And we saw in the previous sessions how knowledge, or memory for that matter, is a faculty of intelligence. Now, intelligence also has got two aspects. One is its discrimination or discriminatory power, and the second is determination. So, one of the biggest benefits that's given for studying scriptures is it increases our power of discrimination. Because alone with our own morality, our own moral principles, which is very relative. What is good for one may not be so for another. Even in this world, you can see what is acceptable in one culture is not in others. So, scriptures is the common platform that actually determines what is right and what is not. So, by studying scriptures, hearing scriptures, attending classes, we increase our power of discrimination. So, this one comes from, in Sanskrit, it's called Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya means to study scriptures. So that's called Swadhyaya. Determination, on the other hand, comes from practice. The more we practice, more we actually get determined. Okay, regularity is the best friend. You wake up every day early in the morning, you chant, and you keep on practicing. Practice 4 regulative principles, practice 16 rounds, practice coming to temple, so on. If you keep on doing it, over a period of time, it will become part of your value system. It increases your determination. So determination comes from practice, which technically it's called sadhana. Okay, so intelligence, one of the faculty of intelligence is knowledge. And intelligence also has got two other aspects. One is discrimination and determination. Discriminatory power comes from studying scriptures. And the determination to practice Krishna consciousness. We saw how the bow of Arjuna, it's called Gandiva, it represents one's determination to practice Bhakti Yoga amidst all the challenges, all the hardships that we have. And that determination comes from putting this theoretical knowledge into practice or by practicing sadhana. Whoever practices sadhana, they are called sadhu. We use this word sadhu very liberally, sometimes without knowing the meaning. Whoever does spiritual sadhana, they are called sadhu. So, this chapter, Krishna in the previous chapter, third chapter, he actually says, by deliberate spiritual intelligence, one will be able to conquer this eternal enemy called lust. And that leads us to this link to knowledge, and that's how the fourth chapter is actually linked. If you read the last verse of the third, it talks about intelligence, and Krishna extends that. When Krishna speaks Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, he doesn't say chapter 3, chapter 4. He doesn't say that. It's just one continuous conversation. So, Krishna mentions about intelligence and then he moves to knowledge. This is a very important chapter in many ways. Most important thing you would actually take from this chapter is about how to approach a spiritual master, how to inquire, and how to acquire this transcendental knowledge. Okay, so I'm going to go almost verse by verse for the first section alone, because every verse is key verse and it's very important. First verse, Krishna says, the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to sun god Vivashwan. So that's the name of sun god. And Vivashwan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, also called as Swayambhuva Manu. And Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. Lord Ram made Ikshvaku's dynasty famous by appearing in his lineage. One of Lord Ram's name is Ikshvaku Kula Tilaka, which means the crest jewel of the dynasty of Ikshvaku. So Krishna here says that to Arjuna, I instructed this to sun god Vivashwan, Vivashwan to Manu, Manu to Ikshvaku. Interestingly, if you see, of the 4 orders of the society, spiritual orders of the society, we have a social order. We have Brahmana, we have Kshatriya, we have Vaishya, and Shudra. Studying scriptures, patan patan, yajan yajan, dana pratigraha. In crux, studying scriptures, disseminating that knowledge of the scriptures to others, doing yagya, and teaching others how to do yagya, accepting charity and giving it to charity. These are all the 6 duties of a Brahmana. So, knowledge is usually associated with Brahmana. However, if you read this verse carefully, everyone who is actually mentioned as the recipient of this knowledge, none of them are Brahmana. Interestingly, they were Kshatriyas. Okay, Iman Vivashvata Yogam. Vivashvan is the sun god. Sun god gives it to Manu. Again, he is king. Manu gives it to Ikshvaku. Again, he is king. Even if you take Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is a king. So the question naturally comes, why instead of Krishna choosing Brahmana, he gives it to Kshatriya? In fact, Krishna's role itself is also very interesting. Krishna performed all the 4 roles also. If you read the story of Bhagavad Gita, what is Krishna doing now? Driving chariot, which is again a duty of a Shudra. What is he doing? He is giving knowledge. So he is doing duty of a Brahmana. He himself is a prince of Dwaraka, Kshatriya. And where was he brought up? Vrindavan, in Vaishya community. So Krishna touches on all of them. Now the reason why Krishna gives this knowledge to Kshatriya, it's not like Krishna doesn't give to Brahmana. He does. He gives it through Vedavyas, Shukadeva Goswami. You see, there is a certain lineage that goes that way. But in this particular instance, reason why Krishna is giving the knowledge to Kshatriya is the very word Shat means hurt. Trayate or Triya means one who protects. T-E-C-T-S. Protects. And the word root is very similar to, let's say, mantra. Tra also means to protect. Man means mind. So that which, mana trayatiti mantra, which means that which protects the mind is called mantra. So same way, he who protects the people from getting hurt is called a Kshatriya. So that's by definition. Now, hurting means there are few ways how we can hurt. We can hurt a person by words. We can hurt a person physically, as usually Kshatriyas are associated to in warfare. Or we can hurt a person intellectually also. So if we take it on a very superficial level, as it turned out in later ages, after the Vedic times, kings, they usually are associated with just killing. They don't follow any morality, they don't follow any principles. By hook or crook, they want to just win the war somehow. You study all this later history, you will see. Different and recent wars that happened on global level, you will see. Somehow or other, go past the line, somehow or other win the war. Whereas in those days, in Vedic times, the kings are endowed with knowledge, they are endowed with military expertise also. So with that skills in military warfare, they would protect the body, but with this knowledge, they will also protect their citizens from getting stuck in this material world. In other words, they will, by dint of acquiring this knowledge, they will make sure that a proper Vedic culture is being established so that everyone who is under their rule will have a chance to practice Bhakti Yoga, will have a chance to go back to the spiritual world, will have a chance to practice spiritual life. So that's the important duty of a Kshatriya. Not just to protect people on a physical level, but also on an intellectual level, also on a spiritual level. In other words, to give holistic protection. That is the duty of Kshatriya. So that's why Krishna, you see the parampara, he gives that knowledge, not just to Brahmanas, but also to all the kings. Next verse, very famous verse. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in this way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. Now we come across this word called parampara, or disciplic succession. What is disciplic succession? Disciplic succession is not a mere repetition of words. That's there on a very superficial level. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who is the spiritual master of our Srila Prabhupada, he says, parampara means it's not a repetition of words, but it is a link, unbroken link of hearts. This is his definition. And he also gives the analogy, just like the soul traverses in this body, it keeps on moving, and at death, it just gives this body, moves to the other body. Similarly, the essence or the spirit of scriptures keep remaining the same. However, the form, how the scriptures are presented, may vary from time to time. Even in scriptures, we see instructions that are specifically given for a certain day and age. Like Satya Yuga, Krite Dhyayata Vishnam. You go for meditation to the forest. For how long? Yeah, only 60,000 years. Okay, so Satya Yuga. Then you see different for Dwapara Yuga, different for Treta Yuga. And Kali Yuga, you see chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Okay, so the essence is the same. What is the essence? Always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. Okay, what is the form, how that instruction is taking place? In different age, it was meditation. Another age, it was doing sacrifice. Another age, it was visiting different temples. And in Kali Yuga, simply to chant the holy name. Okay, even in Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's life history, if you see, there is an interesting pastime. We were discussing about Mayavadis or Mayavada philosophy a couple of classes ago. Those who practice Mayavada, they are called Mayavadis. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to take great pleasure to argue with them and win over them in arguments. So there was one instance where Mayavadis, when they were studying, they somehow realized, finally we have an argument against Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So they sent an invite to him, telling him, come for debate. But as part of the condition, they say Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur can use only these three scriptures. One is the Gita, second is the Ishopanishad, and third is Srimad Bhagavatam. So then Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur replies back saying, all right, I'm coming. So then they get a little scared. They send back the message saying, you cannot use Bhagavatam. You have to use only Gita and Ishopanishad. And you still have to come and prove that Krishna is a person. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, all right, I'm still okay, I'm coming. They send a message again, this time they remove Gita. Usually, Upanishads, Isha Upanishad. Upanishads talk about the formless aspect of the Lord. Definitely, the all-pervading aspect. So finally, they send a message to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur saying like, look, you cannot use even Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam. You can use only Isha Upanishad. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur replies back saying, yeah, that's fine, I'm still coming. Then they send a final message saying, please don't come. So the essence is the same in all the scriptures. But the way how it is presented, if for those who haven't caught that essence, they may get distracted superficially, if they're just holding on to that superficial level of philosophy. Okay, so Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, parampara means it's a link of hearts. So the same knowledge which Krishna infested into the heart of Brahma, from there it's coming. Brahma to Narada, to Vyasa, Madhava, all the way to Prabhupada's heart. Prabhupada gives it to his disciples' heart. They instill in our heart. Okay, spiritual master means master of the spirit. Many times, when you get initiated, devotees sometimes have this feeling, my spiritual master is not with me. Or we even think, does my spiritual master know my name? How many of you thought that? Okay, because my spiritual master has a lot of names, a lot of disciples. Does he remember my name? Spiritual master by definition means master of the spirit, which means he's not master of the body, he's master of a soul. So Prabhupada says the duty of spiritual master is to take care of the disciple's soul. And the duty of disciple is to take care of spiritual master's body. Okay, because his soul is already with Krishna. So they just have to serve the body. But the spiritual master's duty is to take care of the disciple's soul. Doesn't mean like he's going to ignore the body, but the point is this. Point is, primary duty of the spiritual master is to take the soul towards Krishna, to the spiritual world. That's the idea. Okay, so this is what Krishna is saying. So this is received through disciplic succession. However, in due course of time, now when is Krishna speaking about this one? He's talking Bhagavad Gita and Dwapara Yuga, which is the previous Yuga. Now if we think only in Kali Yuga, because of the effect of time, things are deteriorating, we are 5,000 years into Kali Yuga, that's why there is not much proper guru-disciple relationship and everything. Krishna is talking about it in Dwapara Yuga itself. Understand? So it's the chain getting broken is not just a sign of Kali Yuga. It's the sign of being in material world, BMW. So we have to understand that the difficulty, material world always had problems. Okay, 4 problems that are given in the material world is birth, death, old age and disease. So these 4 problems, they are always there in the material world. Be it Satya Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga, Treta Yuga, doesn't matter. All 4 yugas have the same problem. And the process varies slightly, but the essence of all of that is the same. Okay, so disciplic succession means link of hearts. Then Krishna goes on to say the qualification. Why he chose Arjuna as his disciple now. What is he saying? Because you are my devotee and my friend. So these are the 2 qualifications we need to have also. Now we may say, I'm not a devotee. Doesn't matter, but we need to be at least favorably disposed to hearing from Krishna. Otherwise, if Krishna says, I'm the Supreme Lord, if you don't put trust in him, if you don't treat him as your friend, what will you do? He's just bragging. Then that defeats the purpose of us hearing Gita. So the qualification to understand Gita is to be Krishna's friend and to be his devotee. Now we may not be. Let us assume that we are, at least if we can do that much. With that understanding, read the rest of Gita. By the time we finish Gita, I bet, even though it's against 4 regulative principles, we'll become devotee of Krishna. Okay, we will love Krishna for what he is. 4th verse. Now, we touched on this particular verse before also. Arjuna is teaching how one is supposed to ask questions to the spiritual master. It's not that Guru says something and the conversation always has to be in a unilateral way. It doesn't have to be. It can be 2 ways also. But how one is supposed to inquire from spiritual master, Arjuna is exemplifying here. Arjuna said, the sun god Vivashwan, this is 4th verse, is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed the signs to him? So Arjuna's question to Krishna is, you are my contemporary, you are my cousin. We both took birth pretty much around the same time, but here you are taking a claim that you are the one who taught this to sun god, who is millions of years older than you. So now Arjuna is saying, see, I caught you. He's not saying. He's saying, how am I to understand? So he's not doubting Krishna's words. He's putting himself in a position. Carefully he's choosing his words. And he's saying, how am I to understand this? He's not saying, what you say is contradictory, Prabhu. He's not saying that. He's saying that I completely understand what you are saying is true. But please help me to understand. So this is the proper way to go and inquire from a spiritual master. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. So this is 5th verse. The personality of Godhead said, many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot. O subduer of the enemy. How can Krishna remember all of them and Arjuna can't? Because Krishna doesn't change his body. Arjuna does. Every time we change body, we lose memory. Okay, so that's what happens. Because there is soul and there is subtle body and there is gross body. If at the time of death, we quit only the gross body, then we take birth again. If at the time of death, we quit both gross body and subtle body, we go to the spiritual world. So there is soul, there is subtle body, which is mind, intelligence and ego, and then there is gross body. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, all our senses. At the time of death, what happens is, the gross body alone is quit, and the soul is carried by the subtle body into other person. However, the process of birth is so painful. We think process of death is painful. Scriptures explain the experience one goes through at the time of death. 1,000 scorpions stinging at the same spot at the same time. We can't even imagine. That's the pain that's actually given in the scriptures as what a soul actually goes through when he's actually changing the body. This is at the time of death. Now it will look a lot significant if you read 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where it explains the pain which a soul goes through to take birth in this life. Because at the time of death, it's just a momentary feeling in one sense. Everything, you get the pain of 1,000 scorpions stinging at the same spot at the same time, and then you quit the body. You feel excruciating pain one moment, and then you quit the body and go. However, if we are to take birth, we are imprisoned in the body of another living entity for how long? 10 months. Hanging upside down. Being eaten by the worms. It gives a graphic description actually, third canto. So birth is very painful. So by the time we come out of that, even though intelligence is still holding the knowledge, it's not accessible. We go through almost like a permanent amnesia. Okay, so we don't remember that. However, some people, they may be able to. You'll come across people who remember their past lives and everything, but that's not the norm. Usually that's what happens. Now here is the point I was saying. If we quit only the gross body, then we take birth again, because the subtle body is still here. However, if we quit both gross body and subtle body, all we have is the soul, which means soul will go to the spiritual world. So what Krishna helps us to do by giving knowledge is to quit the subtle body at the time of death, not just the gross.
So is memory the product of the gross body?
Subtle body, intelligence. So Krishna here is saying he's able to remember all of that because he doesn't change body, whereas because Arjuna is changing body, and every time he has to go through, again he's talking Arjuna in his conditioned state, which we saw Krishna put him deliberately. But that's the position of all of us. 6th verse, although I'm unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I'm the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Self-explanatory. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and the predominant rise of religion, at that time I descend myself. So Krishna is saying, when he descends down, when there is a predominant rise of religion, predominant rise of irreligion. Here irreligion, in Vedic terms, refers to materialism. Now, materialism existed even in those days also. If you look at the kings, let's say Hiranyakashipu. Now, same rule applies for all the avatars of Krishna, be it Narasingha, be it Varaha, everyone. So, whenever Krishna comes down, it will be when the materialism goes on a rampant pace. So, when materialism actually goes high and religious principle starts to go down, or irreligious principle starts to go high and religious principle starts to go down, at that time, Krishna comes. Why? To maintain the balance. Okay. Now Krishna says what he does whenever he comes in the next verse. He does 3 things. He delivers the pious, annihilates the miscreants, and re-establish the principles of religion. So 3 things he does. First thing is he punishes the bad, protects the good, and re-establishes religion. Now, this is the 3 principle. You can put any avatar. When you, in the study of any avatar, you take Narasinghadev, he punishes bad. Hiranyakashipu protects good. Devotees, and Prahlad Maharaj re-establishes the principles of religion by installing Prahlad Maharaj as the king. You take Lord Ram, kills Ravan, protects the good, protects all the devotees, re-establishes by installing Vibhishan as the king. You take Krishna, King Kamsa, kills everyone practically, all the unnecessary Kshatriya, military strength, protects the good, protected the Pandavas and all the good people, and then re-establishes by installing a saintly king, which is Yudhishthira Maharaj. Okay, so we can study all the signs of avatar. There is a book called Laghu Bhagavatamrita. It talks in detail about avatars only. There are 6 types of avatars. We'll be studying that when we study Chaitanya Charitamrita. But if anyone is interested to have a quick reference through all these different avatars, the science behind them, the different scriptural references, it's just a very small book, similar size to Surrender Unto Me. It's called Laghu Bhagavatamrita. It's the essence of Bhagavatam, Brihad Bhagavatamrita. This one is written by Rupa Goswami. So Krishna says whenever he comes, these are the 3 things he does. Protects the good, punishes the bad, and re-establishes the principles of religion. 9th verse, which is a very often quoted verse of Srila Prabhupada. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving this body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So Krishna here is saying, whatever he is saying here, if one comes to know about it, then there is no birth in this material world again, but he goes back to the spiritual world. Now, there are so many people, maybe half in this world knows about Krishna. Especially in India, there is a cartoon movie called Little Krishna. Many people know. Does that mean anyone who comes to know about the word or the person called Krishna, they are qualified to go back to the spiritual world? Yes and no. Yes and no. However, the knowing which Krishna is speaking is not just knowing, but it's understanding. Knowing means I can tell, I know the president of US, he may not know me, so that's knowing. Just to be informed of what is happening, that's knowing. Understanding means that's a word you will use when you speak to your friend. I understand you. I understand your feelings. A partner actually speaks to the beloved. I understand what you're conveying here. That is understanding. What Krishna means by knowing here is understanding him. And how do we understand? Krishna says only by devotional service. Krishna says in 11th chapter, which means one who knows about Krishna and then understands him will become his devotee. That's the point Krishna is saying here. Because for us, we clearly treat knowing and acting on that knowledge as two different things. Whereas in the context with which Krishna is speaking, he is speaking on an absolute sense. When you say no, which means I know Krishna is the Supreme Lord, which means I'm going to worship him and I'm going to become his devotee. So they are not two different things, knowing and understanding. But because we live in 2019, we need to analyze it this way. Because the usage of the word no in the contemporary sense is slightly different to how Krishna uses in Bhagavad Gita. So what Krishna uses in Bhagavad Gita as no is actually understanding him and not just knowing. Because in Vedic culture, if somebody is in knowledge, it's assumed and it's understood that they're going to act on that. Whereas now it's different. Cigarette smoking is injurious to health. Yeah, I know that. You still smoke it. So they are two different things. Now, okay. So Krishna here, he says, one who knows about my appearance and activities, which means acting in that knowledge, which means becoming my devotee upon quitting the body, will not take birth again in this material world. And then Krishna gives the qualifications. Now, next section, 11 to 15, Krishna now talks about the application of transcendental knowledge. Krishna says how he is not bound. Why is he not bound? Because he is not attached to any of the results that comes as a result of doing any action. So Krishna is saying, because I'm not attached to any action, because I'm not bound by the results of any activities, I'm in a liberated state always. And one who knows this truth about Krishna, that he is in a liberated position, Krishna says, they're also liberated. Now, next section, 16 to 24. If you read your appendix, understanding karma on the platform of jnana. Now, before we go here, Krishna was talking about Nishkama Karma Yoga in 3rd chapter, if you recollect. Why are we talking knowledge? Because if you refer to 3rd chapter, 35th verse, till that point, Krishna was talking about Nishkama Karma Yoga only. And then 3:36, Arjuna asks this question, by what is one impelled to act in a wrong way, as if by force, even though he knows? So then Krishna, from 36 onwards till end of 3rd chapter, continuing into 4th chapter unto 4:15, Krishna answers that question. So in one sense, Nishkama Karma Yoga stops at 3:35. Karma Yoga stopped at 3:35. Arjuna asked a question, so Krishna takes a detour since till 4:15. 4:16 onwards, Krishna comes back to Karma Yoga again. So that's why, if you read the summary, it may not be quite obvious, but that's what is happening here. As I said, Krishna doesn't say chapter 3, chapter 4, he doesn't say that. But the verses which Krishna speaks from 36, Arjuna asks the question. Then from that point onwards until 4:15, Krishna answers it. And once Krishna finishes answering it, he goes back to where he left, which is in 35. He was speaking about Karma Yoga. So he'll continue his discussion on Karma Yoga in this section. Understanding karma on the platform of jnana. What is Nishkama Karma Yoga? We said there are three things that are involved. It has to be, you have to work in knowledge, you have to do as a matter of duty, whatever activities that you do, and you should not be attached to results. So there is knowledge, there is action, and no attachment to no results, or rather, no attachment to results. So Krishna, if you remember these three, this is how we discussed Karma Yoga or Nishkama Karma Yoga. So Krishna will continue this discussion again in this section. By applying transcendental knowledge, one can perform detached actions in Krishna's service. These actions are karma, actions without reactions, and are on absolute platform. Thus Krishna explains how karma can be seen as jnana. In this section especially, Krishna warns Arjuna not to break his head to understand how karma works. And there are a lot of Puranic stories. There is one story where Lord of Death, Yamaraj, he goes to the abode of one of the demigods. And as he goes to meet, he sees a small bird sitting there. He just looks at him quizzically and he just keeps staring at him and he walks. Now, if a Lord of Death keeps looking at a living entity for a long time, what does it mean? He's going to kill them. So now Garuda, which is the transcendental carrier of Vishnu, sees Yamaraj. Now Garuda is a bird. So he has that soft corner for a sister bird. So when he sees Yamaraj looking at the bird and going in, Garuda instantly concludes that Yamaraj is about to kill. So he is looking at him. So as soon as Yamaraj goes out of sight, immediately what Garuda does is snatches the bird, flies to the far end of the universe, puts him in one planet and then comes back and sits as if he knows nothing. Now Yamaraj finishes team meeting and he comes out. And then now he sees, he keeps looking at the same spot and now Yamaraj is stunned. What happened to the bird? The bird is not there. Now Garuda, looking at Yamaraj, he gives him a smirk and he says, "What are you searching?" And he says, "There was one small little bird, did you see?" He said like, "Oh yeah, I know. You are about to kill, so I have saved him in a very, very far away place." So Yamaraj then says, "Yeah, that's exactly what I was actually thinking. Because knowing the fate of this bird, I was thinking, this bird is supposed to be in that far end planet. How is he going to make it in time to be killed there?" So thank you. So the laws of karma is very, very intricate. And Krishna wants Arjuna, forget it. It's difficult. If Krishna says something difficult, you take it in absolute sense. Forget it. We should not try to understand. And there are instances also. If you take Dhritarashtra, who is father of the Kauravas, the only verse he spoke was in the, I think, 1.1. Not I think, it's 1.1. Now, at the end of the entire Kurukshetra war, he has lost all his sons, 100 sons. So he asks Krishna, why did it happen to me? What karma did I do to be living to see the death of all my sons right in front of me? Because usually the timely death means usually the father dies, grandfather dies first and then the father and then the sons. If the order gets reversed, then it's untimely. So, but if something like that, untimely death happens, it's a cause of great misfortune, as well as it's a sign of a very strong bad karma. Karma itself is bad. We are used to using the word bad karma. So it's a bad karma. So Dhritarashtra wanted to know, so he asks. And then he gets the answer that 100 birds before, he was a hunter. And he killed 100 birds. So now the question comes, 100 birds before, he killed 100 birds. If his karma has to affect him, he should have gotten this bad karma in the next birth itself. So then when he asks that question, then he gets the answer back from Krishna that, by the way, getting 100 sons, to get that 100 sons, you need to get some punya, some good karma. So you have to take birth 100 times to acquire all the 100 sins, and then in one stroke you lose all of them. Understand? That's how ruthless law of karma is. So Krishna says to Arjuna, forget about understanding all this, and he says, even people who are in knowledge, they get confused. What is action, what is inaction, and what is prohibited action? Now here, action and inaction, Krishna uses in a certain context. If you understand this, you will understand the whole section. Action here refers to those activities that brings karma baggage as a result. So there is a consequence, karma, that's attached to some activity. Then such activity, Krishna classifies that as action. Inaction doesn't mean you are sitting idle. Inaction means you are still doing an action, however, there is no karma consequence for this. So Krishna uses the word for inaction, akarma, which means you are doing activity, however, it's transcendentally situated, that activity, and it's not bringing you any results back in terms of karma baggage. So that's inaction. So what Arjuna is telling is, if I kill people, that means it's action. Krishna is saying, if you kill people for your sense gratification, then it comes under this category. However, if you kill for religious principle, then it comes under here, which means it's an action. However, in terms of getting any karma back as a result of that, as a consequence of that, it doesn't exist. Is that clear? Okay, if you understand this, whole section will be clear. 16 to 24, that's the crux of it. Okay. What it means is, Krishna, when he says action and inaction, what he means, he defines action and inaction in terms of, okay, I'll use the word reaction. If you do an action and there is a reaction to it, then it's called an action. If you do an action and there is no reaction to it, then it's called inaction. Yes, because it's still an activity. In terms of reaction, it's still akarma. It's as if I'm not doing anything.
Akarma is nothing but the punya, correct?
No. There are two different concepts. Akarma means it's activity. Okay, let's take a step back. Okay, if I do any action, let's say karma, then there are two possible outcomes. One is called papa, which is called sin. Another is called punya, or some benefit you get. Any activity that you actually do comes with these two. Now, one may think, if I do good things, that means I'll get punya. But the problem is, even to enjoy the effects of punya, you have to take birth again. You may be born as a rich person, but you still have to go through the same cycle of birth, death, disease, and old age. So Krishna says, there's no point in going for either papa or punya. They both are pretty much the same. It's just that, let's say if somebody does sin, he'll be born in this world. Somebody does punya, he'll also be born in this world. Only difference is, those who commit sin, he'll be born in a bit abominable position. But those who have done something good, they may be born again in the same world, but in some favorable position. Materially favorable position. However, you still have to go through all the pain, which both of them goes through. So it's not so wise to do anything that's going to bring either of them. So best is to do something wherein you still do activity, because what is not possible is us sitting idle. It's not possible. Even if we breathe, we are killing a lot of microbes. So to be in an absolute position of doing nothing is non-existent in material world. And it's not possible also. Krishna also, we saw in the previous chapter, Krishna says that it's the nature of the soul, even in liberated state, to be active. It can't sit idle in one place. Now the same, it's like, example sometimes I give, you take, well when I was a kid, not when I was a devotee, we used to play, you catch the wasp, you put them in a sealable pack and you seal it. What will the wasp do inside? It will still be buzzing around. Our soul is exactly like that. Soul by nature is very active. Just like you seal that in a resealable pack, similarly, the soul is actually sealed within this body. So soul can't be just be seated idle. It can't be. So soul is going to drive this body, push the body to do something. So Krishna is saying, anyway you have to do karma. To be in a position of inertia is not possible at all. So if you do, then by nature, in this material world, any action that you do, it's going to bring these two effect. Either you're going to get sins or you're going to get some punya, some pious credit. Okay, that's the benefit here. Punya means piety. Some pious credit you will get. So for either of them to enjoy, you have to take both again in this material world. So Krishna says, you have to do karma because you can't escape it. By nature, we have to do some activity. However, if we can somehow do karma, but without getting entangled in these two, rather than coming to the BMW, you can go to spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan. Introducing Bhakti Yoga. So in Bhakti Yoga, we do karma, devotional service. But instead of bringing us papa and punya, in devotional service, which we were explaining in last class, how Prabhupada, even Nishkama Karma Yoga, he uses synonymously to devotional service. And we said, acting in knowledge, do your work as a matter of duty. What's the third most important thing? Be detached to result. If you are detached to result, which means you are detached from this. That's the result. So because you are detached to result, now you are doing an activity in knowledge as a matter of duty, being detached to result, it counts as devotional service. So we go back to spiritual world. So what Krishna is urging Arjuna to do is, Arjuna was talking on a very superficial level, wherein he thinks if I kill a person, it's going to bring me karma. Krishna says, what determines something is action or inaction is not depending on external circumstance. Rather, it's the consciousness that determines, or the motive, why you are doing it, on whose instruction are you doing it. That's what determines whether something is action or inaction. If you do an activity on the order of Krishna, simply to please him without being attached to the result, then that's a higher level of consciousness, counts as devotional service, that will elevate us to spiritual world. On the other hand, if we do an activity thinking that I want to get something out of it, I'm doing it whimsically because I'm driven by my own personal ambitions, then it's going to bind us. It may sometimes bring us sin, it may sometimes bring us piety. However, Prabhupada says, one is, material world is a prison. Whether you are in first class prison or third class prison, Prabhupada says it's the same, it's a prison.
So the soul carries the karma from past lives?
Yes.
Not the subtle body, but the karma?
Yes. It carries the subtle body along with that, along the subtle body carries the karma. Yep.
Okay, so then if you're in this world, you got some bad karma from your past.
Yep.
I think you said in one of the chapters that if you practice devotional service and you have a spiritual master, that bad karma can be released.
Yes.
And the ultimate goal is Goloka.
Yes.
That's why you're doing it, but in your present life you can cleanse that.
Correct.
Bad karma
Correct.
by practicing the bhakti yoga.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So you carry that.
We carry that. That's why we do one of the samskar, mundan. When a baby is actually newly born, in Vedic times, the hair is considered to be carrying the residual karma from previous life. So what you see as the hair of the newly born baby, it's the manifestation of previous life karma. So sometimes I look at like, okay, how is your karma? How is your karma doing? And the baby looks at it, get out of my sight. So it's called, there's a samskar called the mundan. So the first hair is considered to be contaminated. So that's why we shave it off. The very first hair for the baby. Okay, so that carries, it's considered as a representation of the previous karma, so we just shave it. That was the idea.
You don't get rid of the karma in new rituals just by shaving off the
To a certain extent.
But why only for boys and not for girls?
Girls also, they do.
When they leave Shikha, they don't do full head shape. They leave Shikha for various births. So why they leave?
Because it's for Vishnu. Why do we have Shika? Whole body is a temple, that's why we decorate it with the tilak. Just like if you go to a temple, there are marks there. Shika represents the flag, Dvajastamba. So this one, it's said that Krishna will hold this and take us back to spiritual world.
I'm just asking that this is they consider
You engage even your bad karma in Krishna's service by leaving a tuft of hair. So it's no longer your karma, but it's meant for different purpose. Off topic, please. We have to go back here. That was an example.
Different from prohibited action, because I thought like we spoke about action and action.
Okay, prohibited action. Prohibited action brings papa. So prohibited action is the cause. Prohibited action means bad action. Papa is the effect of the action. So one is the cause and the other is the effect. So karma is prohibited action, or vikarma, and papa is the sin or the effect of that bad action. Is that clear? Okay. Let's move to the next section. Sacrifices lead to transcendental knowledge. 425 to 433. The fruits of all kinds of Vedic sacrifices is transcendental knowledge, which leads to liberation and ultimately to pure devotional service. Now, usually, when we think of sacrifice, we tend to think, we were touching on this couple of classes ago, we tend to think there is a sacrificial fire, there is going to be an oblation, swaha, that's one type of sacrifice. What Krishna explains in this section, especially 425 to 33, he will talk about how the principle of sacrifice can be implemented in different ways. One way of doing it is by offering ghee into the fire. What are the other ways? Sense control, chanting, that's why we call Sankirtana Yagya. Okay, studying scriptures, Swadhyay, that's also one of the scriptures. Breath control, that's one other sacrifice. So what Krishna means by sacrifice in this section, 425 to 433, is not just a sacrifice, but the principle of sacrifice. And what does it mean, principle of sacrifice? To be detached from the results. You do things as a matter of duty, you do it with knowledge. Again, Nishkama Karma Yoga. Krishna is just extending the conversation from the previous chapter here also. So this section talks not just on sacrifice per se, wherein you have a Yagya Kunda Homa and you offer the oblation to that and you chant mantras, that's one way, it's done. But there are other ways also how sacrifices can be done. Yagya nam japa yagyosmi. Krishna says of all the different types of yagya, he is japa yagya, or chanting of the holy name, by in beads. And so Krishna here gives different examples. As I said, breath control is one, which is done by Ashtanga yogis. Knowledge yagya by jnanis, that's also given. Those who are grahasthas, there is a certain duty that's given. Those who are brahmacharis, there is a certain duty given. So this whole section actually talks about different types of sacrifices. Now, here is the crux of all of that. Why should one do the sacrifice? Here is the equation Krishna gives. All sacrifice leads to transcendental knowledge. Remember, this chapter is transcendental knowledge. So Krishna is saying, if you keep sacrificing your results, if you keep doing Nishkama Karma Yoga, we will get a transcendental knowledge. That transcendental knowledge will allow us to get liberated from Papa and Punya. Again, piety and, because you do sacrifice, you are not holding. So when you do the sacrifice, you get the knowledge that will put you in a liberated state, and that will allow you to do devotional service. Now again, for studying, we are going through this equation. But for us, Prabhupada kept it very simple. As we said, Prabhupada just cut to the chase and said, just chant Hare Krishna, do devotional service. We are just studying, analyzing it to see how different processes come and culminate in devotional service. That's the idea why we are analyzing. But this is the link between sacrifice, knowledge, and devotional service. So that's the crux of this section. And then Krishna comes to the concluding section, 434 to 442. Because acting on transcendental knowledge received through the disciplic succession destroys the sinful reaction to all work, one should do his duty fixed in transcendental knowledge. Now there are a couple of key verses in this. Go to 435. Now Krishna in this verse gives 3 effects which one gets by acquiring the knowledge. First effect Krishna gives is Yagyatva na punar moham, which means one gets free from illusion. That's the first effect. So this 435 talks about what benefits you get by acquiring this transcendental knowledge. And how do you get? By the process of sacrifice. How do you do sacrifice? You work as a matter of duty, be detached to results, and work with knowledge that you are not the body, you are the soul. Start with that. It will lead you ultimately to understanding Krishna. Once you actually gain that transcendental knowledge, Krishna says there are 3 benefits that comes with that. First is, no more illusion. Na punar moham. Second one is drakshasi. Will be able to see everyone in relation to Krishna. Relationship of every living entity with Krishna. And the third effect, if you read the verse, Prabhupada actually says here, having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion, for by this knowledge, you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, that they are mine. We will also understand the position or the presence of Krishna. Krishna, so these are the 3 benefits of gaining transcendental knowledge. You get free from illusion. You understand every living entity as being in relationship with the Supreme Lord. Now, usually, we always have that one person in life we hate the most. And we think, if we can somehow get rid of this person, everything is going to be good. How many of you have? Now, this verse, Krishna teaches us, simply by taking this process of transcendental knowledge, we fall in love with Krishna, we practice Krishna consciousness, we get free from illusion. What is the illusion? We are the body, we are not the soul. From there, you get free from illusion, which means we realize that we are the soul, we are not the body. There is an eternal relationship between us and the Supreme Lord. In that same vein, we also understand every other living entity is also part and parcel of Krishna. His Holiness Radhanath Swami says, if you hate a person, it means you hate an aspect of Krishna. Very deep point. I'll repeat. If you hate a person, it means you are hating an aspect of Krishna. That's why in a devotee circle, usually devotees say, sadhu savdhan, handle with care. Okay, if you look at devotees, you need to also remember, handle with care. Why? Because Krishna is watching over their shoulder. When we deal with the person in any relationship, that's why it said Krishna is the third partner. In any relationship, husband and wife, between 2 friends, between 2 devotees, in any guru-disciple, Krishna is the third person. So we should always remember that by re-establishing this link, lost link between us and Krishna, it will give rise to universal brotherhood, universal sisterhood. And that will help us to follow peaceful process, and then work in harmony with each other in this practice of devotional service, especially among our devotee community. So it's very important that even as devotees, we inculcate this knowledge, become free from illusion, and then understand that we are actually dealing not just with any other living entity, but with living entities who are very, very close to Krishna. Krishna is very, very possessive of his devotees. And that gives us hope. Because Krishna is known as Bhaktavatsala. Bhaktavatsala means one who is very, very favorably positioned towards his devotees. One who loves his devotees. That's Bhaktavatsala. Krishna is not known as Jnani Vatsala or Yogi Vatsala. He is only called as Bhaktavatsala. Of the different types of yoga, those who follow Bhakti Yoga, they are called Bhakti Yogis, and Krishna or Bhaktas. Krishna is especially very friendly. He loves them. That's why he's called as Bhaktavatsala. Okay, so if we understand that, with this particular point, with this knowledge, we'll be able to deal with each other very well. We'll be able to deal with every other living entity very well. Okay, unlike modern governance or governments, Vedic governments, they take care of every living entity. Their governance is holistic. They take care of plants, animals, birds, reptiles, every single person, every single living entity. How is that possible? That is possible when we understand that everyone is not the body, everyone is the soul. So naturally, you are seeing all of them on a very, very equal platform. In Vedic culture, there is a saying, or rather, there is a story, even in Ramayana. When Lord Ram kills Ravan, he becomes the king of Ayodhya. Lord Ram used to have a bell tied outside his palace. And whoever wants to get audience from Lord Ram, they can come and they ring the bell. So Lord Ram started to rule very nicely, so much so that the bell started to get rusty. Nobody had to come and ring. So, but every day morning, still Lord Ram would religiously ask his younger brother, Lakshman, to go outside and see if anyone is waiting for his audience. So one day Lakshman goes out and comes back and says, nah, everyone is happy. Then Lord Ram sends him again. No, go again. Then Lord Ram goes, Lakshman goes and he sees there's a dog outside who's seeking your audience. Then Lord Ram says, bring him in. So the dog comes in. And the dog complains to Lord Ram, there is a Brahmana who bet me with a stick for no reason. So then Lord Ram summons the Brahmana. And then Lord Ram asks, why did you beat him? The Brahmana couldn't give any satisfactory answer. So the Lord Ram wanted to punish. So in Vedic culture, even punishment would vary depending on the position. There is a story, we don't have time, in Mahabharata also. There was one murder that's committed, but there is a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, all four are involved in it. When the case comes in front of Yudhishthir Maharaj pardons Shudra and sends him away. Because Shudra, he's on bodily, he knows nothing, he just follows. By definition, he just takes the order and he follows, he can't discriminate. So he gives him clemency. And then Vaishya, he gets a slightly higher level of punishment. He asked him to be beaten, pay some fine. Same way Kshatriya, Brahmana, he was put to death. He was told, actually, you have to do something equivalent of being sentenced to death. Because along with the knowledge comes responsibility. Like Spider-Man, always say. Along with the power comes responsibility. Likewise for Hare Krishnas, along with the knowledge, we have that responsibility to act on that knowledge. So here the dog actually tells to Lord Ram, and then Lord Ram says, you are a Brahmana, you need to be punished severely. And then the dog says, I have an idea. And then Lord Ram asks, what is that? Then dog says, make him the Acharya of that mutt. So it points at one religious organization. And then, true story. And then Lord Ram asks, how will that punish him? Then the dog actually reveals that, by the way, I was the Acharya in my previous life there. So what will happen? You go there, people around him, they'll always glorify. Pride will go to his head. He will commit offense and he'll become a dog like me. And Lord Ram says, Tatastu. That was the punishment. He was made the Acharya of one bogus religious organization. So point is, the governance, the king, he takes care of protecting each and every living entity. Not just humans. That's a very, very narrow approach, actually. But then even to understand that, first, that's why Prabhupada says this knowledge is required for kings, especially. We are coming back to the same point. This knowledge is required for people who are heading the government. Okay, let's move on. There's one other verse I want to bring your attention to, 39. A faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses is eligible to achieve such knowledge, and having achieved it quickly, attains the supreme peace. So, spiritual peace, supreme spiritual peace. Now, usually we ask, why is it some devotees, they progress faster in Krishna consciousness? Even though they might have started very late, how is it they are progressing faster? This verse gives the answer to that. What is Krishna saying? Let's take it to the previous verse first. Let's read the 38th, and then when I link it, you will understand what Krishna is saying here. 38, in this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time. In other words, by doing devotional service, one comes to the platform of knowledge, and by continuing to do this, one attains perfection in this process in due course of time. Sa kalena. Kalena means in due course of time. However, Krishna actually takes it to one step further, saying if anyone wants to go on fast track, Krishna says in 39, it is possible. How? There are 3 prerequisites if you want to make faster progress in Krishna consciousness. What is the first one? Shraddhavan, a faithful man. We need to have faith. Why should we have faith? Because we study, we get this knowledge. However, There's always a gap between the knowledge and our realization. A gap between our knowledge and the value system, the principles, the values that we truly stand for, the things that we give priority to. There's always a gap. And we always have this point, unless I'm convinced, I'm not going to pursue this. So Krishna is saying, yes, there is a gap between the revelation or your knowledge, revealed scriptures. So there is this gap between revelation and realization. So you put some faith there and follow the scriptures, then you can speeden up this. In other words, by having faith, you can bridge the gap between your theoretical knowledge and the practical knowledge, which means put faith in your theoretical knowledge and just follow it. Just do it. That's Krishna's line. Okay? Now we may think, but it's quite hard. How can we just put faith? We can put faith differently, in different ways. Last week somebody asked me this question in email. I'm not getting any realizations at all. What's the best way to get realization? I answered it this way. We are studying scriptures now, right? Rather than looking into the future or looking at the present, we have read quite a few bit in the scriptures which we can realize retrospectively. For example, when we studied about lust, we may not feel lusty now, but studying about the nature of lust, we can relate to our past experience. Yeah, that's true. That's why I reacted in a certain way, or that's why I got confused there. So retrospectively, you can take the knowledge which you have now and apply it to study your past experiences. And when you are convinced, that's as good as realizing it, correct? That's a good starting point. That is possible. That's available for everyone. We don't need to have very deep, profound realization for that. Take this knowledge and apply it to any of the experience in the past. Now, by virtue of doing it, by virtue of getting convinced, naturally, our determination and our conviction to now take it and apply in our current life as well as in future, it will grow considerably. That determination. So that's how we put faith. That's how we realize the knowledge. In other words, all of us have realization. We just need to take time to take the scriptural knowledge and apply it to any of our past experiences. We all have realized knowledge. It's possible. Retrospectively, we can have realizations. That's possible for everyone. So start from there, and then slowly by analyzing, we'll be able to apply that knowledge now. We can actually take it to the future also, which means even before doing it, we'll be able to pull back. Nah, I'm not going to do this. If I do this, this is where it's going to lead me. Remember, discrimination. Scriptures will give us discrimination. A wise man learns from others' mistakes. A good man learns from one's own mistake. So best way to do it is learning from others' mistakes. Scriptures, that's why, gives us case studies. If you do the right thing, this is how you are going to benefit. If you do the wrong thing, this is how you are going to suffer. So rather than, that's the reason why we even study history. We don't need to do each and everything, reinvent the wheel. We can look at how others conducted themselves, what worked for them, what doesn't, and we can leverage on that. That's the whole beauty of scriptures also, in spiritual sense. So that's the first thing that's going to help us in speeding up the process. We are still in verse 39. Second one, tatpara. Tatpara means we have to be attached to the transcendental knowledge. Attached in the sense that anything that we actually do should be guided by this transcendental knowledge. So that's in other words, whatever that we study, whatever spiritual principles that we actually hold dear to our heart, we should try. We should not be lazy. We should try to apply that in every possible opportunity in our life. So that's the second thing we have to do. Third is we have to control our senses. If one does all the three, Krishna is saying, if you use the word, if you see the word he uses, achirena adhigachati. Achirena means quick. Previous verse he uses the word kalena. Kalena means in due course of time. You keep doing it, slowly you will get there. But if you want to make it quick, then these things are required. What are they? First is faith. Being attached to transcendental knowledge, or in other words, apply the knowledge that you have. And third aspect is control your senses. So if we can focus on these three, then Krishna is saying, you'll progress in a very, very quick time. You'll actually attain perfection. We'll go to the last verse. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen into your heart and out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. So it's a similar conclusion which Krishna gives at the end of 2nd chapter also. As a result of which Arjuna got confused. Now after telling everything about knowledge, Krishna is saying, all right, you heard all of that, now pick up and fight. Arjuna goes to confusion again. Deja vu. So then Arjuna will ask the same question again in 5th chapter. But again, as I said, there is a difference between 3rd and the 5th one. We'll discuss that next class. Any questions?
When we say we need to understand rather than just know about Krishna, but at the same time, say if at the time of quitting body, we understand like the story of Ajamil, right? He wasn't even calling Narayana, but his son. So without, I don't know, knowing or understanding what's the best word to say.
Yeah.
How does that make
Good question. So Mataji's question here is, we all know the story of Ajamil, who called his son's name, which happens to be Narayan. So in his case, he doesn't know, he didn't even intend to call Krishna. Ajamil's story alone, I'll answer different ways to answer. I'll just be very precise. Ajamil doesn't go to spiritual world at that point of time. So it was a near-death experience for him. They call it NDE. So he sees the Yamadutas coming and pulling his soul along with his subtle body. And then out of fear, he calls this little kid playing there, Narayan. And then Vishnudutas come. There's an argument that ensues between Yamadutas and Vishnudutas. And Yamadutas are defeated. Yamadutas go. Vishnudutas also go. So now Ajamil, he wakes up. He is in his slumber of sense gratification. So he doesn't go back to spiritual world. As soon as Yamadutas leave, Vishnudutas also leave. They come protect him from being dragged to Yamaloka. And they leave him also back in the same body and they leave. Now he wakes up, gives up his family, goes to Haridwar, takes up chanting of the holy name. At the end of the life, same Vishnudutas who came to protect him, it's mentioned. You talk about being personal, that's how personal Krishna is. Vishnudutas also, there are innumerable. But Vishnu specifically sends the same set of people who protected him because they'll feel happy. So they come at the end of the life and picks him up from Haridwar and take him to spiritual world. So Ajamil doesn't go to spiritual world just because of calling his son's name. It started his spiritual life, it revived his spiritual memory. And then he took up the process sincerely. At the end of the life, he went back to spiritual world. Did I answer the question? Yeah. Can you please give an example of sacrifice leading to knowledge and knowledge leading to liberation? Sacrifice leading to knowledge and knowledge leading to liberation. Slightly technical, I'll come at the end. May I know where does the Hare Krishna or a practitioner of Krishna consciousness belong in 4 social orders of a society? We don't belong to any of them. Prabhupada writes in the purport. We do everything. We follow what is called as the Daivi Varnashrama. Varnashrama. General Varnashrama system is, there is 4 orders, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Karma Kanda definition is, if a Shudra is born, follows his duty as a Shudra, at the end of his life, when he dies, in the next life, he'll be born as a Vaishya. Lead another life as a Vaishya. Then after that, he'll be born as a Kshatriya. Lead. Again, after that, he'll be born as a Brahmana. Lead. When by that time, he should have come in contact with the devotee and he should have become a Hare Krishna. So the purpose of following only Varnashrama is to become a Hare Krishna. Okay, so we don't belong to anything. We already finished that off. That's why we are here, wherever we are. When they asked Prabhupada, we don't remember doing anything pious. Prabhupada said, I have given all my piety. You don't need to. I have given all your spiritual benefit before. You don't need to bother. That's why our only qualification is, we have the order of the spiritual master. That's all. Can you please explain how Arjuna's question in 336 is answered in what Krishna speaks from 337 to 415? Good. So in 336, Arjuna asks, by what is one impelled to act in a certain way as if by force, even though unwillingly? And then Krishna goes on to explain that it's lust only, Arjuna, which is born in mode of passion, which later transform into wrath. And then Krishna analyzes lust. And then after he analyzes lust, Krishna also says how to conquer that lust by deliberate spiritual intelligence. And then he extends the conversation into 4th chapter also, wherein Krishna now tells how can you train such intelligence. In other words, how can you acquire that knowledge? Through this parampara, and then Krishna gives the whole chain. So until 4:15. So till 4:10, Krishna speaks about the transcendental knowledge, and 4:11 to 4:15 talks about applying that knowledge. So that's how Krishna answers, and he takes the conversation back to where he left. Okay, we'll finish the next one. You mentioned, which one am I supposed to? You mentioned knowledge leads to liberation, which leads to devotional service. But in 3:38, Krishna mentions devotional service needs to knowledge. Please clarify. Good question. I'll give you an example with an analogy. You figure out the answer. Let's say I want to cook halwa. There is some knowledge that's required to cook halwa. Correct? So there is some X amount of knowledge required. However, by cooking halwa also, I also learn how to cook halwa even better. So understand it. If GBC approved guru initiates me, and after some time by my GM is no GBC approved guru. So now what would be my position? Good question. Technically, all of us have, not technically, in reality, all of us have direct relationship with Prabhupada. Prabhupada is our preeminent Siksha Guru. Not just now, for eternity of ISKCON. Okay, so we have our Diksha Guru and we have our Siksha Guru. Siksha Guru is always Srila Prabhupada, Diksha Guru is our Guru Maharaj. And we are here. Okay, so here we are. So we always have a connection with Srila Prabhupada. Now, that connection is formally established through the process of Diksha. However, once this connection is established, even if the Diksha Guru goes away or no longer approved, the connection is established, so it's there for eternity. So technically, you don't need to go for another spiritual master. If you want, you can. So GBC allows that. However, once that initiation happens, you're already linked. You don't need to take initiation again. Crude example I can give is, let's say, door-to-door salesmen, sometimes they come there. Let's say you buy a washing machine in door-to-door, something like that. Okay, he may promise you something and he says, next to 3-year warranty. He gives you the warranty card. But he changes company, he goes away. But the company will still honor that warranty card. Understand? So same way, when a Diksha Guru initiates, he initiates to take the disciple to link him into the parampara starting from Prabhupada. Once that link is done, so Prabhupada is the company owner in that example. So this honor will be there. But if you need personal guidance, GBC also allows you to go and take shelter of other spiritual masters also. That's also possible. Can you please give an example? Okay, we'll come to that. Does BG talk about demigod worship? Yes, 7th and 9th chapter. Does Krishna approve that? Krishna tolerates that. Krishna says only unintelligent people go there, actually. So Krishna approves in that sense because you are still following the process. However, you are not doing the most intelligent thing. How can we discriminate with knowledge if we see Krishna in every living entity? Can you please explain further in this regard? How can we discriminate with knowledge if we see Krishna in every living entity? We don't see Krishna in every living entity. We see every living entity is belonging to Krishna. We see every living entity is connected to Krishna. Which means there is Krishna, there is me, and there is another living entity. How are we both related? We both have the same father, so we both are brothers, or we both are sisters. So that's how we see the connection. The problem comes when we think I'm Indian, you are like some Australian, or I am male, you are female, or I'm good guy and you are bad guy. That's all happening on a very material level. What Krishna is asking us to do is, he is taking it to a much more deeper level. By dint of this knowledge, one will be able to come to the position wherein, cutting across all these external coverings, one will be able to still deal with the other person on a much more deeper, profound spiritual level. So that's what Krishna is asking to do here. I'm sorry? Not in every living entity, in the body of every living entity. In my body, there is my soul and there is a super soul. Super soul is not superimposed on my soul. They are two different ones.
Yeah, but what's the difference? You said that not in the
No, living entity is the soul. Sorry, you can ask the question.
So, what you explained now was that Supreme Father is Krishna, but also he resides in all of us as
Paramatma.
Paramatma.
Yes.
That Paramatma is,
Yes.
so in that level sense also, we are all connected and we should,
Yeah, you can see it. Yeah.
like 518 says this.
Yeah.
That
hmm You can see it that way also. You mentioned that whatever spiritual karma we get is transferred to the next life. However, what will happen at the end of Kali Yuga if you haven't achieved 100%? You will continue into Satya Yuga. What's the problem? So, Krishna says, Ananyas chintayanto mam yajana paripashate tesham nityam yuktanam yogakshema vahamyaham. I carry to those who are completely devoted to him. Krishna says, surrendering to him, taking up full-time devotional service, doesn't mean as a full-time devotee, staying in the temple, as a devotee properly, 24/7. Krishna says he carries what we lack and he preserves, he protects what we have. So whatever that we lack, Krishna will actually fulfill it. So Krishna will not keep on waiting and say like, you missed out now again, come back again. So Krishna is Krishna is a very loving father. Prabhupada says he is more anxious to see us go back to spiritual world than us. In fact, scriptures say, even when we sleep, Paramatma keeps standing. Do you know that? Paramatma never sleeps. In our body, he always keeps standing, ready to protect. So that's how anxious Krishna is. So Krishna is more anxious for us to go back to spiritual world than we ourselves. We are having a good time here, actually. We don't want to go, we can chant later. So our anxiety is much, much lesser compared to Krishna. Okay, we have to wind up now. Could you please explain more elaborately on advancing in devotion quickly by following 3 things like faith and by applying transcendental knowledge? I have to give a long answer. We'll come back. Park this. We have to touch this next week. Actually, it's time up. Park the other one also. We'll come back. Thank you. If anyone wants answer during the week, please email me the same question. I have to do. Sorry, we are way over time. Thank you for your kind attention.
जगत गुरु शिल प्रभुपाद की, श्रीमद् भगवद गीता की, श्री श्री राधा गोपीनाथ भगवान की, समवेद गौर भक्त वृंद की, जय निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे.
Hare Krishna, please proceed to the restaurant area. Prasadam is ready for you. Thank you.